Welcome. So this is 9.2, factoring trinomials when a is greater than 1. So the rest of this unit we'll be focusing on factoring quadratics in standard form. And this written here, ax squared plus bx plus c, that is standard form for a quadratic, where a, b, and c are like numbers. A and b would be coefficients, and c would be a constant, and x is just our variable. So for a quadratic means that it has the highest exponent is an x squared. So in this situation, this is a quadratic. If we didn't have an x squared, say we only had the bx plus c, that's really a linear equation, and we won't be doing that. Okay? So in the past, we learned how to find the product of two binomials. So for example, in number 1, we talked about either foiling or using a box method. It's because I think it's a little faster. I think we'll just foil. So let's do this together. So 4x times 2x gives you 8x squared. Okay, and then we distribute to the next term. That gives you plus 4x. And then we'll add these two, or multiply those two together. That gives us negative 2x. And then when we distribute there, that gives us a negative 1. All right, so you notice when we distribute like that, or even if we use the box method, we end up having 4 terms. In our last class, we talked about factoring by grouping. And whenever we had 4 terms, then we want to do grouping. All right, but then if we can keep going, we can combine like terms. Those two would combine to give us 2x, and then we still have our minus 1, and we still have our 8x squared. Okay, so here we end up having 3 terms. So the idea of what we're going to be doing today for factoring is going the opposite direction. We're going to start with 3 terms. Okay, we're going to start over here, and we're going to figure out some way to break the middle term into 2 parts so that we have 4 terms. And if we have 4 terms, then we can cut it in half and we can do grouping. And we'll end up getting our 2 parentheses. So that's the plan for today. Okay, and that's basically what I wrote here in the notes, so you're welcome to read that if you'd like. But that's what we're going to end up wanting to do. Okay, so let's just get started with a problem. This is actually the same problem as what's up there, except we're going the opposite direction. I have some steps to be able to do this, but I feel like if we work through some problems, I feel like that probably is a better way to go. But, okay, so the first step here is to multiply the first and last term. Okay, just like that. So we multiply that together. That ends up giving us a negative 8x squared. So that's the first step. The next step is we want to find 2 things that will multiply to give you that. So 2 things that multiply to give us negative 8x squared, but that can add up to give us the middle term. So 2x. This would be our middle term. All right. So let's think about that. What are 2 things that would add to give us 2x and multiply to give us negative 8? So I would highly recommend that you make factor pairs. So all the things that can multiply to give us 8. So we could do 1 and 8. You could do 2 and 4. And that's it. So those are the only 2 numbers that will multiply to give us 8. Okay? So, but we also need them to be able to add up to give us 2. So if we plugged in like 1 and 8, there's no way that we're going to be able to add those up to give us 2. And when I say that you can, we could add or subtract anything, it doesn't really matter. So you could do like negative 1 and 8, well that gives you 7. You could mix this up and say, well maybe if we use negative 8 and 1, well, that would give us a negative 7. So those won't even work. If we did 1 and 8, that gives you 9. If you did negative 1 and negative 8, that gives you negative 9. So there's no way that we can come up using 1 and 8 to give us 2. So let's try 2 and 4. Is there some way that we can add or subtract 2 and 4 to give us 2? All right, well, if we had a -2 and a +4, that would combine to give us a +2x. And then if we multiply those two together, if we multiply 2x, -2x, and multiply it by 2x, or 4x, sorry, that would end up giving us a -8x squared. So this is the two things that would multiply to give us -8x squared and add to give us 2x. All right, so this is the step where we are, when we talked about here, this is where we're going to break those into two parts so that we can have it we have 4 terms. So now that we know that 2x is equal to this, we're going to substitute that in. So we'll have 8x squared, and that was already there. And then we're going to do minus 2x plus 4x. And that's come from breaking that into two parts. And then we'll have minus 1, which was already there. Now we have 4 terms, and we can do grouping. So this right here is the new part for today. If you need to go back and have some more practice with just grouping, go back to 8.1. Okay, so after that we will cut it in half. So this is the steps for grouping. Okay, so again, we'll just look at the steps really quick, make sure we got everything. So it says first, multiply the first and third term. That gave us the -8x squared. Okay, and then we're going to find 2 terms that will multiply to give us that and add to give us the middle term, which is 2x. Okay, and we thought about it. We even did factor pairs to try and figure out how can we make these two numbers, these factor pairs, one of the factor pair that would make that work. And there will always only be one that will make that work. Okay, so we found that out, and then we substituted in for the middle term. Okay, because those are equivalent to each other. And then it says step 4 is just to do grouping. So we cut it in half, and now we're going to do the greatest common factor for the left side. Well, if we look at that, we can take out a 2 and an x, so 2x, and then we need to leave everything else that's left. So we'll divide the left side by 2x. That leaves us with 4x for this. So 8 over 2 gives you 4. X squared over x gives you x. And then we'll do it to this side. We'll do -2 over 2. That gives you -1. And x over x, that just cancels out. Now we'll do it to the right side. What's the greatest common factor between these two terms? Okay. Well, there's not we can only factor out a 1. Can't take out any x's, so we'll take out a 1, so +1. And then we'll put whatever's left in our parentheses, so 4x minus 1. Okay. And what's in those two parentheses are the same, and they have to be. If you if they're not, then you made a mistake. So we'll have 4x minus 1, and then everything else will go into the second parenthesis, so 2x plus 1. Okay, and that is fully factored. Okay, we could look at what's in those parentheses and say, can we factor out anything else? Any other numbers or variables can we take out? And we can't, so we're done. So let's do another example. Okay. All right, so here again we're going to do glasses. Again, I didn't mention that before, but this is oftentimes what I will call glasses. So we do glasses. It kind of looks like glasses. So cool, like that. Okay. And then multiply that gives us -12x squared. And we need to find something that multiplies to that and adds to give us 11x. So that's our middle term. Okay, if you need to, you can come up with factor pairs. So 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Okay, let's see if any of those pairs can add to give us 11. All right. So let's start at the bottom. So let's just see some that won't work. So we can't add or subtract 3 and 4 to get 11. The highest we could get would be 7, and the smallest we could get would be 1. Okay, so that won't work. 2 and 6, if you added those together, that only gives us 8. So we can't, there's no way we can get up to get 11 there. But 1 and 12, we sure can. Okay, so let's look at that. So if we had 1x and 12x, which of those two need to be negative to get 11, a positive 11? So it would have to be our negative 1 and a plus 12x. Okay, because you combine those together, it gives us 11x. And if we multiply those, negative 1 times 12 gives you negative 12x squared. Okay, so we've got that finally, and we'll substitute that in for the middle term. So we'll have 3x squared minus 1x plus 12x minus 4. So again, those two are the same, and here's what we just cut into two parts. All right, and we'll cut it in half. We'll do grouping. So what's the greatest common factor for the left side? Well, it would just be an x. We can't take out anything else. We could take out a 1, but 1 times x is just x, so we're good with that. Divide everything by x. That leaves us with 3x minus 1. And then on the right side, greatest common factor would be 4. So we'll do plus 4. And divide everything by 4. That leaves us with 3x minus 1. Again, those are what's in the parentheses is the same. So we'll factor that out in the front. So 3x minus 1. And then everything else, the x and the 4, x plus 4 will go in the other parenthesis. Okay, we'll check, make sure there's not anything else we can factor out. It looks like there's not, so we're good. All right, so I'd like you to try and do C, or try as many as you can, and we'll go over them. Okay, so pause if you would, give this a try. All right, so first thing we do glasses. That gives us negative 8x, or n, I guess, n squared, and they want to add up to give us a negative 7n. Okay, so we could do factor pairs for 8, would be 1 and 8, 2 and 4. Okay, kind of did this one kind of very similar to that. And again, it's going to be 1 and 8 that would make that work. Would have to do negative 8n plus 1n to make that work. And we'll substitute that in. So we'll have 2n squared minus 8n plus 1n minus 4. And we'll cut it in half. So the greatest common factor for the left side would be 2n. So we'd divide everything by 2n. And that leaves us with n minus 4. And on the right side, the greatest common factor would be 1. So we'll do plus 1. And everything else would go in the parentheses. So n minus 4. Again, these are the same. So we'll factor those out. We'll do n minus 4. And then everything else will be 2n plus 1. There's nothing else to factor out, so we're good. All right, let's do some more. Again, we'll do glasses. That gives us negative 6 times 5a squared gives you negative 30a squared. This should be an a. And we need to multiply two things that multiply to give us that, and add to give us negative 13a. So here, let's do factor pairs again for 30. We could do 1 and 30. We could do 2 and 15, 3 and 10, and I think 5 and 6. Okay, so obviously 1 and 30, that won't give us to 13. 5 and 6, I mean, that can only add up to give us 11, so that won't do it. So we'll have to look at these two. So what about 3 and 10? All right, so if we do 3 and 10, 3a and 10a, what do their signs need to be to make it be negative 13? We would have to have a negative 3a and a negative 10a. But wait, if we multiply those together, that would give us like negative 3 times a negative 10. That would give us a positive 30a squared. So that won't work, okay? So oftentimes there'll be problems like that where looks like there's 2 that could possibly work, but then the sign, one of the signs will be wrong. So be careful with that. So here, 3 and 10 doesn't work. But what about 2 and 15? Okay, which one needs to be negative and which one needs to be positive? So it would have to be a negative 15a and a positive 2a to make that work. So again, now if we multiply those together, that gives us negative 30a squared. And if we add them together, that gives us negative 13a. Okay, so then we'll substitute that in. We'll get 5a squared plus 2a minus 15a minus 6. Cut it in half. Greatest common factor for the left side. It looks like there's only an a. So we'll divide everything by a. That leaves us with 5a plus 2. And then on the right side, greatest common factor here would have to be negative 3. Okay, again, if we have a leading negative, that comes with it. So we'll divide everything by 3. That leaves us with a positive 5a plus 2. Right? And these are the same, so we'll factor those out. Again, if they're not the same, then there's been, maybe you didn't do the greatest common factor, or maybe you forgot the leading negative, something like that. So we'll have 5a plus 2 times a minus 3. Okay, we'll check, make sure there's nothing else we could factor out, which looks like we can't. So we're done. All right, 2 more. Let's give this a try. So pause if you can, give that a try. All right, so we'll do glasses. 10 times negative 12 gives you negative 120x squared. And we need to add up to give us 7x. Okay, so here definitely when we have bigger numbers, we should do factor pairs. So for 120, we could do 1 and 120. And then we could divide 120 by 2, and that would give us 60. And then we could try 120 divided by 3. That gives us 40. And we just keep on going. Okay, 5. How many times does 5 go in there? I think it's like 20, 24, I think. Okay, maybe I should check. So we're doing it good. Okay, so 120 divided by 5. Yep, 24. Okay, I could try 6. Does 6 go in? I think that gives you 20. 7, we could try 120 divided by 7. But that gives you a decimal, so maybe we'll try 8. 8 and 15. Okay. Could try 9. And if you figure the answer, then you don't need to continue going, but I just thought we'd go all the way. So then we get 10 and 12, and 11 doesn't go in, and then 12 is already on here, so we don't need to go any further. Okay, so when I'll look at these and see how can we combine, which factor pair will combine to give us 7? Definitely not this one. Okay, definitely not. Those are way too big to be able to add or subtract to give you 7. Same as that one, same as that one. 6 and 20. Well, if 6 was negative, that could give us 14. Nope, still not close enough. What about 8 and 15? Okay, can we add or subtract somehow to give us with 7? And you maybe say, yeah, Mr. Warner, if you did a positive 15x and minus 8x, then you got it. That would give us 7x. Awesome, good job, everyone. So, I think we found it. Okay, we could try 10 and 12, but if you added those, that's 22, and if we subtracted, that would only give us like 2, so no way that's going to work. Okay, so that would be our choice. We're going to substitute that in. We'll do 10x squared plus 15x minus 8x minus 12. Okay, and I just put it in that order. You could also plug them in like this. Okay, oftentimes people will do switching those two. It won't change your answer. It's just when you have when we always have these two parentheses, they may be switched, and that's not an issue or anything. That's fine. Okay, so here we go. We'll do grouping now. We have 4 terms, so we can take out a 5x. That leaves us with a 2x plus 3. And then on this side, we can factor out a negative 4. So negative 4, and that would leave us with 2x plus 3. Okay? And they're the same. Fantastic. So we got it right. 2x plus 3 and 5x minus 4. And it looks like there's nothing else we can factor out, so we're good. Okay, last one. So glasses, negative, what would it be, 56 m squared. They need to add up to give us a negative m, or that's the same as a negative 1m, if that helps. So negative 1m. Okay, maybe we'll do factor pairs again. So 56, we could do 1 and 56. We could do 2 and 28, which is just that what we had there before. There's 3 go into it. Let's see. So 56 divided by, 56 divided by 3. Nope. We could try 56 and 4. That works. So 4 and 14. What about 5? 5 doesn't go in. What about 6? Can we divide it by 6? Nope. What about 7? 7. So we could do 7 and 8. So look at this and see if you can come up with the 2 things that will, all of these will multiply to give us 56, but we need to figure out which of those will add or subtract to give us a negative 1. Okay, so it looks like, well, 1 and 56, no way we're going to get 1 with that. 2 and 26, that would give us 26 if we subtracted. Here that would give us 10 if we subtracted, but here, if we subtract those, that would give us 1. Okay, we just need to figure out which one is going to give us a negative 1. Okay, which is 8 going to be negative, or is 7 going to be negative? So it would probably be negative 8m plus 7m gives us a negative 1m. Okay, sweet. So we'll plug that in. 28m squared minus 8m plus 7m minus 2. Cut it in half, do grouping. So what goes into 28 and 8? I think it would be 4. So 4n. So divide everything by 4m. That leaves us with 7m. 7m minus 2. And then on the right side, looks like we can factor out a 1. So plus 1. And then divide everything by 1. And that leaves us with 7m minus 2. Those two are the same. Their parentheses are the same, so we'll have 7m minus 2. And then our other parenthesis, that leaves us with 4m plus 1. Okay. So on your homework, if you weren't here, let's see, I changed some of the problems just because I feel like the numbers were a little too big. So this is 9.2 on 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, just cross those out and fix those ones, okay? Hopefully that will save some of your time and not get frustrated, okay? So the first bit is just do it by grouping. It already has 4 terms. Here, this is kind of like our homework last time. You just need to find the thing that fits in here that makes it work. Okay, how I would do that is I would just do like a box method or foiling. You'd end up getting x squared plus something. We'd figure that out, and you get 16. So just do foiling or a box method to find those. Okay. And then we have like 12 of those examples of by doing glasses. And we have a quick review with that, okay, with exponent rules, okay? But most importantly, everything above there is probably the most important stuff that we're covering, okay? All right, sounds good. We'll see you later.